Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There comes a moment in every life when you are brought to your knees, a moment when the world feels like it's caving in on you, when loss weighs heavy, when dreams shatter into silence, and you ask yourself, how am I going to make it through this? Let me tell you something I've learned. You don't find your strength when life is easy. You discover it when life dares you to break. That's where your resilience is born. That's where your soul is tested and your spirit rises. Tonight, I want to talk to you about resilience and inner strength, not as some abstract ideal, but as a living, breathing force inside each of us. A force that doesn't just get us through, it transforms us. You don't really know what you're made of until life tests you, until the ground shakes beneath you and everything you thought was certain disappears. It's in those moments when you are left with nothing but yourself, when all the titles, roles, and masks fall away, that you meet the truth of who you are. That's where you discover your strength. Not in the good times, not when everything is going according to plan, but in the hard, lonely, and uncertain spaces of life. And let me tell you, you are stronger than you think. Sometimes we carry within us this quiet fear. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't handle what's coming? But life has a way of showing us that fear is a liar. Every single challenge that has ever come your way, you've survived it. You've been through pain that you thought would never end, and somehow you're still standing. Maybe you're standing with tears in your eyes, with wounds that haven't fully healed, but you're standing. And that matters. That is strength. Strength doesn't always look like courage that roars. Sometimes it's just the decision to get up in the morning, even when your heart feels heavy. Sometimes it's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when everything inside you wants to give up. Sometimes strength is just taking the next small step forward, even if you're afraid. And that's enough. Because real strength isn't about pretending you're invincible. It's about being honest with your struggle and still daring to move forward anyway. We are often taught that strength means not showing emotion, not letting people see your pain. But I want you to know this. Being strong doesn't mean you never cry. Being strong means you do cry, and you let the tears cleanse what needs cleansing. It means you give yourself permission to be vulnerable, and you trust that your softness is not weakness, it's sacred. There is a quiet kind of strength in choosing to feel deeply, to stay open, to love again, even after heartbreak. That is the strength that transforms. Sometimes we underestimate ourselves because we only measure strength by visible outcomes, by what the world applauds. But let's not forget the silent battles you fought, the moments you held yourself together when nobody was watching, the nights you lay awake wrestling with self-doubt and still showed up the next day. That counts. That matters. That is strength that no one can take from you. Think about the moments when you thought you couldn't go on. Maybe you lost someone you loved. Maybe life didn't turn out the way you hoped. Maybe you faced failure, rejection, or injustice. And yet, even in those moments, there was something inside you that whispered, "Keep going." That voice, that spark, that's the part of you that can never be broken. That's the core of your resilience. And what's powerful is that the more you walk through adversity, the more you realize you are not as fragile as you once believed. You begin to understand that you are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by how you choose to respond. Every time you rise after being knocked down, every time you show up after being let down, you're building a deeper, unshakable strength inside. That strength is not just for you, it becomes a legacy. When you live from that strength, you give others permission to rise too. You become a mirror that reflects courage, a reminder to others that they're not alone, and that they too are capable of more than they imagine. So if you ever doubt yourself, remember this truth. You are stronger than you think, not because you have to be, but because you already are. And that strength, it lives in you, ready to rise when you need it most. Just the word makes most of us wince. It's something we're taught to avoid at all costs. We're told to be strong, to push through, to stay busy, so we don't have to feel too much. We live in a world that tells us if we're in pain, something must be wrong. But I believe there is a different truth, a deeper, more healing truth. Pain is not here to destroy you. It's here to teach you, to reveal something you couldn't have learned any other way. Pain has purpose. And I know that sounds hard to believe when you're in the middle of it. When your heart is breaking, when you're sitting in the silence of loss, when you've been betrayed or abandoned or misunderstood, nothing about that feels like it could possibly serve a greater purpose. But I've come to understand that pain is not the enemy. It's the messenger. It arrives uninvited, yes, but not without reason. Every painful moment we experience carries with it the potential for deep transformation. Pain shakes us awake. It strips away the illusions we cling to and forces us to confront what's real. You learn who you are in pain. You learn who your real friends are. You learn what really matters when everything you thought mattered no longer comforts you. You start asking the bigger questions, questions about meaning, purpose, truth, and love. And that's the beginning of growth. I've seen people go through unimaginable suffering, parents who lost children, people who've battled addiction, women and men who've survived abuse or illness, and they came out on the other side more compassionate, more grounded, more clear about who they are. They didn't become that way in spite of the pain. They became that way because of it. Pain carved out space inside them for something greater to emerge. When we resist pain, when we numb it, deny it, or suppress it, we actually prolong our suffering. Healing cannot happen in hiding. It requires presence, it requires honesty, it requires you to sit with the discomfort and ask, what is this trying to teach me? That doesn't mean pain is easy, but it does mean it can be meaningful. It can be a catalyst for emotional depth, spiritual growth, and inner strength. There's an old saying, the wound is where the light enters you. That's not just poetry, it's wisdom. So many of us wear masks every day, afraid to let people see where we've been hurt. But our wounds are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that we've lived, that we've loved, that we've risked, and that we've survived. When you allow yourself to feel your pain, to learn from it instead of running from it, you become more fully alive. You become more you. Sometimes the lessons pain teaches are subtle. It may show you where you've been giving your power away. It may show you how much you've been neglecting your own needs in order to please others. It may show you that the story you've been telling yourself about your worthiness isn't true. Pain is honest. It doesn't sugarcoat. It points directly to what needs healing. And the beauty is, once you begin to understand the purpose behind your pain, you can begin to use it. You can take your heartbreak and turn it into wisdom. You can take your suffering and turn it into compassion for others. You can take your darkest moments and let them become the foundation of your light. That's not just healing, it's transformation. I believe every painful chapter of your life is a seed. And though it might not look like anything beautiful in the moment, one day you will look back and see that something was growing in the dark. Something was forming inside you that could not have come from comfort alone. That thing is resilience. That thing is truth. That thing is the unshakable knowing that you can endure, evolve, and rise, not broken, but reborn. So the next time you find yourself in pain, I invite you not to rush past it. Don't try to mask it with distractions or bury it under shame. Sit with it, honor it, Ask it what it's here to reveal, because buried within that pain might be the very thing you need in order to become the person you were always meant to be. Not in spite of your suffering, but shaped through it, strengthened by it, and awakened because of it. There comes a point in everyone's life where the weight of disappointment feels so heavy, you begin to wonder if this is where the story ends. You look around and see nothing that looks like hope, nothing that feels like progress. Maybe a dream didn't work out. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe a door you were counting on slammed shut. And in those moments, when the world feels quiet and cruel, it's easy to believe the lie that this is it, that your story is over. But let me remind you, your story is not over, not even close. It's so easy to define ourselves by a single chapter, the heartbreak, the loss, the mistake, the failure. Those moments scream loud, and they try to convince us that we are no longer worthy of a new beginning. But your life is not just one page. It's a book. And no matter how dark this chapter may feel, the next one hasn't been written yet. You still have the pen. You still have the power to choose what comes next. We live in a world obsessed with overnight success, with perfect pictures, with stories that wrap up neatly in under 60 seconds. But real life is not a highlight reel. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's full of pauses, rewrites, and painful plot twists. And still, the most beautiful stories are not the ones without struggle. They are the ones where the character falls and gets back up. The ones where, despite everything, the spirit doesn't break. And maybe that's your story. Maybe right now you are in your hardest chapter. But it's just a chapter, not the end. When I look back at my own life, I can remember the exact moments I thought it was over. Moments I sat alone and whispered to myself, I don't know if I can do this. But somehow, the next day came. Somehow, I took another step, and then another. And slowly, life began to rise up to meet me again. It didn't all change at once, but something inside me began to shift. I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the best parts of my life hadn't happened yet. You have to believe in your own unfolding. You have to trust that just because things didn't go the way you planned doesn't mean they won't turn out the way they're meant to. Sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes what you thought was the end of the road is actually a redirection to something even more aligned with who you're becoming. It may not look how you imagined it. It may take longer than you wanted. But your future is still unfolding, and it can still be beautiful. There is power in holding on to that belief. Power in choosing to write the next line of your story with intention, even when you're still hurting. So even when you don't know what's next. Because the truth is, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the hard parts never happened. It means choosing to carry them with you differently. Letting them shape you, not define you. Letting them soften you, not harden you. You get to decide what this next chapter will hold. Will it be one of surrender? One of rediscovery? One of quiet rebuilding? Or bold reinvention? That's up to you. What you've been through may have changed you, but it doesn't disqualify you. It qualifies you to show up in your life with more wisdom, more courage, more compassion than you had before. Think of every great story you've ever heard. None of them were great because nothing went wrong. They were great because someone kept going. Someone kept believing. Someone decided that no matter how many times they were knocked down, they would rise again. That someone can be you. So if you're in the middle of your storm or standing in the wreckage of something that once gave you hope, I want you to remember, this is not your whole story. Don't close the book just because this chapter hurts. Don't give up on your life when there is still so much left for you to live. The page will turn, the light will return, and when it does, you'll see that everything you've been through was preparing you for the most meaningful part of your journey. Your story is not over, it's just beginning again. In today's world, we are constantly being told to hustle harder, do more, be faster, stay ahead. We wear our busyness like a badge of honor, as if the faster we move, the more valuable we are. But in all that rushing, all that striving, something sacred gets lost. We lose the connection to our own inner voice, the voice that knows what we really need, who we really are, and where we're meant to be. That's why stillness matters. In fact, stillness is not a sign of weakness. Stillness is power. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from effort or energy. It doesn't come from grinding or pushing. It comes from presence, from the quiet choice to be with yourself, to breathe, to listen, and to allow space between the noise. Stillness is where clarity lives. It's where peace begins. It's where you can hear what life has been trying to tell you all along. When you allow yourself to be still, even for just a moment, something shifts inside of you. The worries you've been carrying start to loosen their grip. The questions that kept you awake at night begin to settle. And in that space, you might not find all the answers, but you'll find something even more powerful. You'll find alignment. You'll reconnect with the part of yourself that knows what truly matters. There were times in my life when everything around me felt chaotic, moments when the pressure was so intense I thought I would break. But I learned that when life feels the loudest, that's when I most need to get quiet. I would step away, sometimes just to breathe, sometimes to walk in nature, sometimes to sit in silence with a cup of tea. Those moments didn't solve all my problems, but they gave me the strength to meet them with a clearer heart. Because here's the truth, when you are always reacting, always moving, always proving, you forget how to simply be. And in forgetting how to be, you lose sight of your truth. You stop listening to your inner compass. You confuse exhaustion with productivity and rest with laziness. But your soul was not designed to move at the speed of the world. It was meant to be grounded, connected, still. Stillness gives you space to remember who you are underneath all the roles you play. Underneath the parent, the partner, the professional, the friend, there is you. There is a spirit that wants to breathe freely, that wants to feel joy without explanation, that wants to sit in peace without guilt. Stillness is how you get back to that space. It's how you return to yourself. And here's something else I've learned. Stillness doesn't always mean silence. It doesn't mean doing nothing or escaping reality. Sometimes it means speaking a truth you've been afraid to say. Sometimes it means turning inward and having an honest conversation with yourself. Sometimes it means drawing a boundary, not out of anger, but out of love. Stillness is not passive. It's active engagement with your inner world. In a culture that praises constant doing, choosing to pause is a revolutionary act. It takes courage to say, I'm going to stop, reflect, and recharge. Doing this together sets the stage for a profound understanding of self-awareness and self-regulation. And it takes strength to slow down when the world keeps urging you to speed up. But that's where your power grows, when you learn that your worth is not measured by how busy you are, but by how true you are to yourself. When you come from a place of stillness, your actions have more purpose. Your words carry more truth. Your energy is more focused. You're not just reacting to life, you're responding, from a place of wisdom. You become a force of calm in the middle of chaos, a light for those who are still searching in the dark. So today, I invite you to reclaim stillness. Make time for it, guard it, cherish it. Whether it's 5 minutes in the morning to breathe, a quiet walk in the evening, or simply choosing to put down your phone and look out the window, let yourself be still. You don't need to earn it. You deserve it. In that stillness, you will find answers that can't be spoken, strength that doesn't shout, and a presence that reminds you you are already enough. You always have been. You just needed the stillness to remember the people you allow into your life shape your energy, your mindset, and even your destiny more than you might realize. We often talk about inner strength as something purely personal, something that comes from within. And while that's true, it's also true that our environment matters. The voices we hear daily, the support we receive, and the love we feel all play a role in how we show up in our lives. That's why who you surround yourself with truly matters. Your resilience isn't built in isolation, it's nurtured in connection. We've all had moments where we felt broken or uncertain. And in those moments, what you need isn't someone to fix your problems or rush you through your healing. What you need is someone who reminds you of who you are, someone who holds space for your truth, someone who sees your strength even when you've forgotten it yourself. Those are the kinds of people who become mirrors, reflecting back your power, not your pain. There are people who feed your soul, and there are people who drain it. Some people lift you higher just by being in their presence. They don't always have the right words, but they bring peace. They don't judge you for being vulnerable, they honor it. They don't compete with you, they celebrate your wins and walk with you through your losses. These people are not just friends or family, they are lifelines. They are reminders that you don't have to do life alone. But it's not always easy to tell who belongs in your circle and who doesn't, especially when you're used to being strong for everyone else, especially when you've been conditioned to tolerate relationships that take more than they give. That's why this part of the journey requires honesty. You have to ask yourself, who truly sees me, who nourishes my spirit, who supports my growth without needing me to shrink? Letting go of relationships that no longer serve you is not selfish, it's self-preservation. You don't owe anyone your peace. And you don't need to feel guilty for outgrowing people who were only meant to be part of your story for a season. Just because someone has known you for years doesn't mean they still deserve access to your most vulnerable spaces. Loyalty is beautiful, but it should never come at the cost of your well-being. And if you find yourself alone right now without that circle of support, know this: you are still worthy of love and belonging. You can start by being that person for yourself. Speak life into your own soul. Become your own safe place. Surround yourself with words, music, and messages that empower you. Fill your space with things that reflect your truth, not your fear, because the energy you create will begin to attract people who resonate with the real you. Also remember this: it's not just about who's in your life, it's also about who you are in other people's lives. Are you offering the kind of support you seek? Are you showing up with compassion, with presence, with encouragement? Being a source of light for others doesn't mean you ignore your own needs. It means you let your own healing become a gift to the world. It means you stand beside someone in their darkness without needing to dim their pain or rush their process. Resilience grows when you feel held, not controlled, not fixed, but truly seen. It grows when someone reminds you that you don't have to wear a mask, that your tears don't make you weak, and that your joy isn't too much. It grows in relationships rooted in authenticity, where you can be your whole self without apology. So, protect your space, nurture your energy, choose your circle with intention. Let go of the belief that you have to prove your worth to be loved. The right people will love you simply because you exist. They will walk with you not because you're always strong, but because they honor your humanness. The truth is, we don't heal in isolation, we heal in connection. We rise in the company of those who believe in our light, even when we're standing in the dark. So be that light, and let that light surround you. That is how resilience becomes a way of life. Not something you do alone, but something you build together. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you realize your pain, your survival, and your strength weren't just for you. Everything you've been through, the heartbreaks, the losses, the disappointments, the battles you fought silently, was shaping something greater inside of you. And while resilience begins with you, it doesn't end with you. One of the most transformative acts you can do is to take your story, your survival, and use it to serve others. Because when you turn your pain into purpose, your scars into light, you don't just heal, you become a source of healing. We often think our stories aren't worthy of being shared unless they're perfectly resolved, unless we've come through the storm shining. But the truth is, people don't need your perfection. They need your honesty. They need to know that someone else has been where they are and made it through. That someone else once felt broken, afraid, lost, and still found the courage to keep going. Your truth, raw and unfiltered, can become a lighthouse for someone drowning in silence. We live in a world where people are hurting in quiet places, where smiles hide sadness, where strength is often misunderstood as silence. There are people praying for hope, for a sign that things can get better. And sometimes that sign isn't a miracle from the sky. It's you. It's your story. It's your willingness to say, I've been there too. And in that moment, you give someone else permission to breathe, to feel, to begin again. When you choose to use your survival as service, you transform your suffering into strength. Not just for yourself, but for the world around you. You create meaning out of what once felt meaningless. And meaning is what turns wounds into wisdom. It's what turns despair into direction. You don't have to have it all figured out to help someone else. Sometimes just saying, I understand, is enough. Sometimes just listening is enough. Think about the people who impacted your life the most. I'd bet it wasn't because they were flawless. I'd bet it was because they were real, because they were present, because they met you where you were with compassion and reminded you of your worth. That's the kind of person you can be, not because you haven't suffered, but because you have. And this isn't about grand gestures or standing on stages. Sometimes service looks like holding space for a friend who's grieving. Sometimes it looks like writing down your story so others can find pieces of themselves in it. Sometimes it's simply showing up day after day as your authentic self, living proof that it's possible to hurt and still heal, to fall and still rise, to be vulnerable and still powerful. When you live in service of others, something inside you softens and strengthens at the same time. You realize that you don't have to carry your past like a burden anymore. You can carry it like a torch, and that torch lights the way for others who are still finding their footing. The beauty of this is that in helping others, you also continue to heal yourself. compassion multiplies, light expands. Now, let me be clear. Using your pain to serve doesn't mean you ignore your own healing. It doesn't mean you rush your process or bypass your emotions. It means you honor your journey so deeply that you allow it to become something meaningful, not just for you, but for the world. It means you recognize that your story holds power even in its imperfections. Sometimes the very thing you thought would break you becomes the foundation for your greatest contribution. You become a living reminder that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to do with what happens to us. That choice, to turn inward pain into outward purpose, is the highest form of resilience. So share your story. Share your truth. Speak up even if your voice shakes. Offer your hand even if it still trembles, because someone out there is waiting for a reminder that they're not alone. Someone is waiting for hope, and your life, just as it is that hope. When you choose to turn your survival into service, you become a light in the darkness. You become the answer to someone's silent prayer. And that is a legacy no pain can erase. That is how you rise, not just for yourself, but for all those who need to know they can rise too.